Hey everyone, Teo here. Today I'm comparing the Samsung Galaxy Tab S9 series tablets with the M2 iPad Pros from the perspective of a visual content creator for creating digital art and graphic design. So this video is going to be quite long. If you want to save time, you can check out the text review that I have already written or use the timestamps provided to jump to different sections of this video. Now these new tablets are, in my opinion, incremental updates over the previous generation. So if you want to buy the Tab S8 or the M1 iPad Pros, this video is still relevant because I will not be talking much about the processing power because all the tablets from this year and last year are more than powerful enough for creating art and graphic design. The tablets that I have on this table are the 14.6-inch Samsung Galaxy Tab S9 Ultra, the 12.4-inch Tab S9 Plus. I do not have the 11-inch Tab S9. This is the 11-inch M2 iPad Pro, and this is the 12.9-inch iPad Pro. Let me give you the bottom line up front. These tablets from Samsung and Apple are some of the best tablets in the market right now, and the drawing performance from Samsung and Apple, in my opinion, is on par. Both Samsung S Pen and Apple Pencil 2 support tilt, pressure sensitivity, and palm rejection. Both pens are accurate and sensitive. They produce consistent and predictable performance. With the M2 iPad Pro, Apple has added the hover feature where you can see the cursor when the pen is near the display. This feature is not available with the M1 iPad Pro or the older iPads. So now you can see the cursor preview and how big the brush is before you lay down the stroke. Samsung tablets have had this feature for years. Anyway, not having the hover feature on older iPads have not prevented artists from creating professional art. And both the Samsung S Pen and the Apple Pencil are capable of producing professional art. The takeaway point here is you can expect fantastic drawing performance from the tablets from Samsung and Apple. So to choose between the two brands, I would recommend you consider other features such as the display size, the aspect ratio of the display, the variety of apps, the features provided by the OS, maybe the accessories that are available for the Samsung or Apple iPads. Let's talk about the display size. Let's talk about display size first and how it affects drawing. I don't have the 11-inch Tab S9, so I'm using my Huawei MatePad Pro, which is around 11 inches. So this is how big the tablet is compared to the 11-inch iPad Pro. The iPad Pro is wider by this much, so if you want to buy the 11-inch tablet, you're going to get more surface area on the iPad Pro. Now the smaller tablets are good if you use them with apps that have minimal user interface elements. For example, this app is Infinite Painter, or you can use Procreate. Those apps, they have minimal user interface such as the tools, the layers. And this app is Blank Paint, which is alright because now I have collapsed all the layers. But if you have more layers on the display, let me just show you the layers palette. You can see much of the space is taken up by the palette. So on the smaller tablets, it's best to use drawing apps that have minimal user interface. Whereas on larger tablets such as the 12.4-inch Tab S9 Plus and the 12.9-inch iPad Pro, you get more surface area to show the palettes. Let me show you. The drawing app that I have here is Blank Paint, and I have the same artwork open on the tablets. What I want to show you here is how much canvas space or drawing area you're left with when your display has two columns of palettes. So this is the 11-inch iPad Pro, 12.9-inch iPad Pro, this is 11-inch, 12.4-inch, and the 14.6-inch Samsung tablet. So obviously the drawing area is the smallest on the 11-inch tablet. So on a small tablet, it's best to hide the user interface element to get more drawing space. I would say it applies to the 11-inch iPad Pro as well, although even if you have the palette on the display, you can still get a good amount of space, maybe just slightly bigger compared to this tablet. And on the 12.9-inch, this drawing space is massive. This is huge, so this is really nice to work with for drawing. So if you are someone who needs to draw for long periods every day, I would recommend you go with a larger display because it's just more comfortable to work with. On the 12.4-inch Samsung tablet, you can see the drawing space is actually smaller compared to the 12.9-inch iPad Pro. Probably because the space taken up by the user interface elements is actually bigger. So the palettes here are actually wider compared to the iPad Pro, where both palettes are narrower, which gives you this much larger space to work with. And this is obviously the largest space you can get for drawing. Let me just turn on the color palette by the side. So this drawing space on the 14.6-inch tablet is almost the same space on the 12.9-inch. Again, that's due to the larger or wider palettes by the side. If you hide one column of palette, you get way more space to work with, especially on the larger tablets. So this is a lot more space. Now the physical size of this 14.6-inch tablet is quite similar to A4 size paper. So it's just slightly wider and slightly shorter. And this is how the 12.9-inch iPad Pro compares to A4 paper. The physical size is slightly smaller than A4 paper. And for the 12.4-inch Samsung tablet, this is much shorter compared to A4 and slightly less wide. And obviously for the 11-inch tablets, they are much smaller than A4 paper. I would say the drawing surface area is around A5 size for this and slightly bigger than A5 size for the 11-inch iPad Pro. By the way, if you want to get a real sense of size of all these tablets, you can always cut out the paper and paste them together to match the exact size so that you can get a real look at how big this or how small these tablets are. The next drawing app I want to show you is Clip Studio Paint, which is an app that is best used with palettes and tools shown on the screen because that's probably the most productive way to use this app. I don't think Clip Studio Paint or CSP is that usable on a small tablet because the height of this tablet is, well, not as tall compared to other tablets. And because of that, if you have the layers palette by the side here, you're not going to see many layers. So if you want to see many layers, you will have to use this whole area here for the layers palette. Whereas on the 11-inch iPad Pro, the layers palette actually is still quite sizable. You can see a lot more layers here. And you can put other palettes on top of the layers palette as well. And obviously on the larger displays, CSP is going to work better because there is more resolution to show the UI elements, especially on the 14.6-inch display, which is almost the size of those larger laptop displays. So if you use drawing apps with lots of user interface elements, I would recommend you go with the 11-inch iPad Pro or larger tablets. By the way, Clip Studio Paint has recently released this simple mode where you can minimize the user interface to make it look like other drawing apps. The downside here is you will not get all the tools that are available with the Clip Studio Paint Studio mode. So the smaller tablets are best used with drawing apps that have minimal user interface. Let's talk about display aspect ratio. The Samsung tablets use 16:10 aspect ratio, and for the iPads, it's around 4:3. I personally prefer 4:3 for drawing because this is more usable in both portrait mode and landscape mode. So this is how the two tablets look in portrait mode. So if I turn this to landscape mode, it still looks alright. And this still looks alright. And this is because this app Infinite Painter has minimal user interface elements. Let's switch over to using Medibank Paint again. Okay, so with Medibank Paint in landscape orientation, it looks fine. But in portrait orientation, in portrait mode, if you have the palette by the side, you can see the drawing area becomes this vertical space, which is not ideal. Now on the iPad, in portrait mode, if you have the layers palette by the side, the space is vertical as well, but it's not as vertical compared to the Samsung tablet. So this to me is still quite usable for creating portrait format art, but this really reduces how much you can see for your art. So the Samsung tablet, in my opinion, is best used for drawing when you use it in portrait orientation, whereas for the iPad you can use this in both landscape and portrait orientation. The Apple and Samsung tablets have laminated displays, so there's no gap between the glass and the pixels beneath the glass. So when you're drawing, it really looks like the line is appearing directly beneath the pen tip. Cursor tracking is accurate regardless of how you hold the pen, either vertically or at a very low angle. Next, I want to talk about pen latency. Both Apple Pencil and Samsung S Pen have low latency. However, not all drawing apps have updated to take advantage of that latency. So when you're drawing, sometimes you can still see the line trying to catch up with the pen tip. You can see latency when you're testing for latency, but personally for me, when I am drawing at normal speed, I don't really notice the latency. Palm rejection works great on both tablets. Many drawing apps actually have the pen-only mode, so when you use your finger to draw or when you have your palm on the display, nothing will happen. You will not be able to introduce any straight strokes even if you want to. By the way, the color of the display is different due to, well, the AMOLED versus LCD, color temperature, and also the color mode in the settings. With the Samsung display, I feel like the colors can be too vibrant, so I actually have the color mode switched from vibrant to the normal or standard mode. For media consumption, such as watching videos or gaming, the user experience is better on the Samsung tablet due to the wider aspect ratio. So when watching videos, the black bars are smaller at the top and bottom, and on the iPad it's much thicker. And if you are watching videos on the 14.6-inch Samsung Tab S9 Ultra, it feels like you are watching TV because that display is huge. As for the display quality, the Samsung is using Dynamic AMOLED 2X. I can't remember the exact marketing term. Anyway, it's an OLED display, and for the iPads, they are using LCDs. For the 12.9-inch M1 and M2 iPad Pros, they are using Mini LED, which has higher brightness. And for the 11-inch, they are using the usual IPS LCD. I actually do not have a preference for OLED. A good LCD display can still look terrific. So yeah, I would say in terms of visual quality, both tablets from Samsung and Apple, in my opinion, they are on par. I guess one main difference between OLED and LCD is you get higher contrast ratio with OLED. So even though the display brightness, in this case is 400 over nits, may be lower compared to what you can get on iPad, but due to that contrast ratio, the bright highlights can still look brighter due to optical illusion compared to the highlights on the iPad Pro. Let's compare the apps from the Apple App Store versus those from the Google Play Store. There is a huge variety of drawing apps on both platforms. There are many high-quality drawing apps from the Apple App Store. The one that's most popular is probably Procreate. There is also Clip Studio Paint, Medibank Paint, Art Studio Pro, and PaintStorm are great as well. There is Infinite Painter, There's Adobe Fresco and Adobe Photoshop and Affinity Photo and Sketchbook and Concepts. There are many capable drawing apps from the Google Play Store as well, so you really can't say there are no high quality drawing apps on Samsung tablets. There is Clip Studio Paint on Android. This is Krita. There is Concepts, there is Sketchbook, there is Infinite Painter. There are many who choose the iPad for creating digital art because the popular app Procreate is iPad exclusive. And because this app is iPad exclusive, if you want to upgrade your tablet in the future, you will have to buy another iPad. Personally, for me, I prefer to use apps that can run on multiple platforms so that I can open the same artwork with those apps on multiple platforms. Anyway, even if you lock yourself into the Apple system, I don't think that's a big issue because the next time you upgrade your tablet is probably years later and you would probably have saved enough money to get a new iPad. Where the iPad has a huge advantage over Android tablets for visual content creators is the availability of high quality graphic design apps that can handle vector, typography, and layout. There is Adobe Illustrator, which is pretty much the industry standard for vector graphics. There is Linearity Curve, also known as Vectornator. They have rebranded recently. If you don't know what vector graphics are, these are actually graphics made with mathematical formulas, so you can zoom in all the way and you can retain the sharpness. And this app, Vectornator or Curve, which is now known as Curve, is a pretty fantastic app for creating vector graphics. And these are some sample artworks from the app. There is also Amadine, and this is vector art that I have created for my baby girl. There is also Affinity Designer. This is also vector, so you can zoom in all the way and the text will be sharp. And you can also import fonts into the apps. So you can work with fonts, you can work with text layout, you can actually publish pages, multiple pages if you want to, because there is Affinity Publisher. I don't actually use Affinity Publisher, but if you are into page design and layout, this is an app you can consider because this can, well, be used to lay out multiple pages and this can handle typography. So these are apps that are not available from the Google Play Store. And if you are into graphic design, text, typography, layout, vector, iPad is definitely the tablet to go for. The only vector graphics app I know of on the Android platform is Vector Ink, and this app is subscription based. It costs US $10 per month or $29 per year. And the downside of subscription apps is if you stop paying, you will lose access to your files, whereas on the iPad, there are many one-time purchase vector graphic design apps. And even with Vector Ink, the number of tools that you can get, they are just not as many compared to the tools you can get from Adobe Illustrator or Affinity Designer or Amadine or Vectornator. Personally, for me, I prefer to use those vector graphic design apps on my computer, on Mac OS and on Windows, so not having those apps on the Android tablet is not really a downside for me. But if you want a tablet for all-in-one visual content creation, for drawing and for vector graphic design, go with the iPad. Let's talk about how you can back up your art. On the iPad, you can use either iCloud wireless backup or you can connect the tablet to your computer, either Windows or Mac OS, and use iTunes to backup. And both backup options will back up every single thing on the tablet. For the Samsung tablet, to back up everything, you will have to back up to an external storage. It can be to an external SSD or to the micro SD card. Recently, when I tried to restore another Android tablet using my SSD backup, I wasn't able to get the files, the artworks to restore. But when I set up a new tablet with a cable connection from this Android tablet to a new Android tablet, all the files were copied over. On the Samsung tablets, I recommend you find out where your artworks are stored locally on internal storage if you are not using cloud storage, and back up those artworks manually as an extra precautionary step. Let's compare the ecosystem, starting with the iPad and Mac OS. By the way, there are many features, so I will not be able to cover all of them. I'll just cover the features that I think are useful and the features that I use most often. So the first feature is Sidecar. You can connect the iPad to your Mac using this Sidecar, which is external wireless display mode. So you can move your windows to the side here in extended display mode. And if you have a drawing app that is not available on the iPad, you can draw with your Apple Pencil. Pressure sensitivity works, and tilt also works. Finger gestures also work. As to whether the apps can support double finger to undo will depend on the app you're using. It is possible to use the Samsung tablet as an external display for macOS as well. As to whether the connection is wireless or cable, and whether the tablet can support pen pressure, all that will depend on the wireless display app that you are using. So for example, with this app Duet Display, I can only use the cable connection because the wireless feature costs extra money. This external display feature also works with Android tablets and iPads for Windows computer. You just need to find and install the appropriate external display app on your Windows computer. For Mac OS and Sidecar, that feature is built into the OS. For file transfer between Apple devices, you can use AirDrop. So if I want to transfer a file on this Mac to the iPad, I just open the AirDrop folder, drag that file onto the iPad, and it will open on the iPad. To transfer the file from the iPad to the Mac, I just share and choose to share to the Mac. The iPads that use M1 and M2 processors support this feature called Stage Manager, where you can get an additional desktop space to the tablet desktop space. So here I have the iPad connected to this portable display using the cable, and this display looks washed out because there are some problem with the display. The thing here is there is an additional desktop space, so you can move your cursor over and you can open up your apps on this side. You can also open up multiple apps and they will appear on the side here, and you can switch between the apps. But this workspace is not exactly the familiar macOS or Windows workspace, so it's going to take some time to get used to. And now let's talk about the Samsung ecosystem. So apparently this portable display works fine, it's just that for some reason when connected to the iPad, the colors look washed out. So this tablet, the Samsung tablet, cannot provide enough power to this display, which is why I have an additional power cable connected here. So this is the Samsung DeX desktop UI interface, and I can move the cursor from one display to the other, just like what you can do with Apple's Stage Manager. So here when I open the apps, you can see they are open as floating windows that you can move around and resize easily. So this desktop UI is very familiar because it's actually quite similar to Mac OS and Windows, where you can move the windows around easily. It's just not possible to drag the window from one display to the other because these two are still considered separate workspaces. However, if you copy something here, you can paste it onto the other tablet. Samsung DeX can also run on the tablet itself, and if you are someone who is going to use Samsung DeX often, I recommend you get the 12.4 or the 14.6 inch Ultra size because Samsung DeX works better on larger displays. If you get the 11-inch Samsung Tab S9, then it's best to connect that tablet to an external display. For wireless file transfer between Samsung tablets or Android tablets and Windows, you can use Nearby Share, which is pre-installed on Android tablets, but you will have to install that on your Windows computer, and then you can just transfer files directly without the cable. And there is external display wireless feature as well called second screen, and you can get this same feature with other apps from the Google App Store. So let's go into the second screen mode, where I try to extend the Windows desktop over to the Android tablet. Okay, so this works fine. Now this is in an extended desktop mode. The pen doesn't work, so let me use another wireless display app. So now I'm using the Super Display wireless display app, and the pen works and Tilt also works. If you are using a Windows computer and you want to get an iPad, I would say the main issue will be with wireless file transfer. So you may have to use those websites that lets you transfer files directly. By the way, if you guys know of any apps that you can install on iPad and on your Windows computer that lets you transfer files directly easily, let me know in the comment section below. To transfer files wirelessly from the Samsung tablet to a Mac, there is also the same issue. However, with the Samsung tablet, you can actually connect a USB cable directly to the Mac and transfer files that way. And the transfer is obviously going to be much faster compared to wireless file transfer. For battery life, you can get 8, 9, 10 hours of battery life with both tablets, depending on the auto brightness. So battery life is not something I would worry about. The advantage of the Samsung tablet from the battery life perspective is there is fast charging, so you can charge up the battery really fast if you need to increase the battery life. As for the iPad, the charging speed is much slower. The last thing I want to say is if you have plans to use the tablets mostly at home, you can go for the 12-inch or larger tablets because those are, in my opinion, tabletop tablets. If you plan on using your tablets outdoors often, I recommend you go with the 11-inch model or maybe the 12.4-inch Tab S9 Plus. Those are going to be more portable. If you use a case with your tablets, you also have to consider the extra weight that's added. Alright, I think I've pretty much covered everything I wanted to say. If you guys have any questions regarding these two tablets, the iPad Pro versus the Samsung Galaxy tablets, let me know in the comment section below. And let me know which tablets you are using right now. See you guys in the next video. Bye!